My name is Evelyn Carter, and until the day I got married, I believed the people who loved you would always stand beside you when it mattered most. I was wrong. The doors of St. Matthew's Chapel were only minutes away from opening. My wedding dress was flawless. The white roses in my hand smelled sweet, and outside I could hear nearly 200 guests chatting excitedly. Then I heard my father's voice. Loud, cold, impossible to ignore. I still can't believe she's throwing her life away, he said with a sarcastic laugh. Imagine leaving the opportunities I gave her, just to marry a mechanic. A few guests laughed awkwardly. Someone tried to change the subject. My father continued anyway. A mechanic, he repeated. He's a nobody. In 10 years, he'll still be covered in engine oil. While my daughter wonders what happened to her life, every word felt like a knife. Not because I'd never heard him insult my fiancé before, but because today, he wanted everyone else to hear it too. Nathan never asked for anyone's approval. He worked 12-hour shifts restoring classic cars. His hands were rough, his clothes often smelled of motor oil, and he believed promises mattered more than expensive gifts. When my car broke down at midnight 2 years earlier, he drove 40 miles just to make sure I got home safely. When my mother was hospitalized, he quietly paid part of her medical bill without telling anyone. When my younger brother lost his job, Nathan spent 3 weekends helping him rebuild his resume and find work. He never asked for credit. He simply showed up. But to my father, none of that mattered, because Nathan didn't wear designer suits. He didn't own a luxury office. He wasn't rich. And in my father's world, that made him invisible. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. The wedding coordinator smiled nervously. Your father is ready, she whispered. I nodded, expecting him to come inside. Instead, she looked away. There's one problem. Before I could ask what she meant, my father stepped into the room. His face showed no emotion, no warmth, no pride, just disappointment. He looked at me for several long seconds before speaking. I've made my decision. My heart pounded. Dad, I'm not walking you down that aisle. The room became painfully silent. You chose him, he said. So today, you're on your own. Without another word, he turned around, walked out, and closed the door behind him. I stood frozen. Outside, the music had already begun. The chapel doors were opening, and somewhere beyond them, Nathan was waiting, completely unaware that the happiest day of our lives had just become something none of us would ever forget. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. The silence inside the dressing room felt heavier than the wedding gown on my shoulders. The wedding coordinator gently touched my arm. We can delay the ceremony if you want, she whispered. I slowly shook my head. No. My voice trembled, but my decision didn't. If I wait for my father to become the man I always hoped he would be, I'll never get married. She gave me a sad smile before opening the chapel doors. The music filled the room. Nearly 200 guests turned to look at me. Then the whispers began. Where's her father? Is she really walking alone? Did something happen? I lifted my chin and took my first step. Then another. Every footstep echoed through the chapel. At the altar, Nathan looked confused. His smile slowly disappeared as he realized no one was walking beside me. Our eyes met. Without saying a single word, he understood. His hands tightened. Pain filled his face, but he didn't move. He knew this was my moment. Halfway down the aisle, I glanced toward the last row. My father sat there with his arms folded. He wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't emotional. He actually looked satisfied, as though humiliating his own daughter had proven some kind of point. I felt tears burning my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not today. When I finally reached Nathan, he quietly squeezed my hands. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I smiled through the pain. You have nothing to apologize for. The officiant welcomed everyone and prepared to begin the ceremony. For a moment, I thought the worst was finally over. Then, a deep rumble echoed outside the chapel. One engine, then another, then another. The sound grew louder until every conversation stopped. Guests turned toward the stained glass windows. Someone near the entrance stood up. What is that? The rumbling became impossible to ignore. A child pointed toward the parking lot. There are cars. The chapel doors remained closed, but everyone could hear engines idling outside. One of the ushers hurried toward the entrance and carefully looked through the glass. His eyes widened. He immediately stepped back. What? Another guest asked. The usher swallowed hard. There are black SUVs, The room fell silent. "Not one," he said quietly. "Dozens of them." My father's confident smile slowly disappeared. He stood up for the first time all afternoon and walked toward the window. Outside, one black SUV after another rolled into the parking lot in perfect formation. 30 identical vehicles, every one of them polished to perfection, everyone stopping at exactly the same moment. The engines shut off together. No one inside the chapel said a word. Then, the doors of every SUV opened at the exact same time, and the first person to step out made my father's face turn completely white. Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Every pair of eyes was fixed on the entrance. The chapel doors slowly opened. A man in his early 60s stepped inside first. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, carried himself with quiet confidence, and walked with the calm authority of someone who never needed to raise his voice to command respect. Behind him, dozens of well-dressed men and women entered in an orderly line. They weren't security guards. They weren't police officers. And they certainly weren't wedding guests. The older gentleman stopped in the center of the aisle. His eyes scanned the room before settling on Nathan. A warm smile spread across his face. "There you are," he said. Nathan looked completely shocked. "Mr. Harrison," the man nodded. "I told you we'd make it." A wave of whispers swept through the chapel. "Who is he? Does Nathan know him?" My father frowned. "What is going on?" The gentleman slowly turned toward the guests. "My name is Charles Harrison," he began. "I'm the founder and chairman of Harrison Automotive Group." Several people gasped. It was one of the largest automotive restoration companies in the country, employing thousands of people across multiple states. Charles continued. 7 years ago, a young mechanic walked into one of our garages asking for work. He wasn't asking for sympathy. He wasn't asking for favors. He only asked for one opportunity. He looked directly at Nathan, and he earned every bit of it. The room remained completely silent. When one of our workshops caught fire 3 years ago, Nathan risked his own life to help every employee escape. He refused to leave until he knew everyone else was safe. Months later, he developed a repair process that saved our company millions of dollars. But he never once asked for recognition. Charles smiled proudly. He only asked if his team could receive the bonuses instead. Several of the people standing behind him nodded with emotion. One woman quietly wiped away tears. Another man said, almost under his breath, "That's exactly who Nathan is." Charles looked toward my father. "You judged this man by the grease on his hands." "We judged him by the lives he changed." Then he reached into his jacket and removed a small velvet box. He handed it to Nathan. 6 months ago, our board unanimously voted to make you the youngest regional operations director in our company's history. Nathan stared at the box in disbelief. I told you I wasn't ready." Charles laughed softly. "And that's exactly why you are." The chapel erupted into applause. Guests who had laughed at Nathan only minutes earlier were now standing. Even strangers were clapping. I looked toward my father. His face had completely changed. The confidence, the arrogance, the certainty, all gone. For the first time in my life, he looked genuinely ashamed. But Charles wasn't finished. He slowly turned back toward my father. "There is one more reason we came today, and the next words would change my family forever." Charles let the silence settle over the chapel before speaking again. "There is one more reason we came today." He turned toward my father, his expression calm but unwavering. 3 weeks ago, Nathan received an offer from another company worth several $1,000,000. It included a luxury home, a company jet, and a salary most executives dream about. The guests exchanged stunned glances. Charles continued. "Do you know what his first question was?" No one answered. He didn't ask about the money. He didn't ask about the title. He asked whether accepting the position would force layoffs for the people who had worked beside him for years. Charles smiled proudly. When we assured him everyone would keep their jobs, he still declined the offer. He said, "I can't leave the people who helped me become the man I am today." The room fell completely silent. My father slowly lowered his head. For the first time, he wasn't looking at Nathan's hands. He was looking at the man behind them. Charles took one final step toward him. "You measured success by a paycheck. We measure it by character. And in that category," he glanced at Nathan, "very few people will ever equal him." Without saying another word, Charles extended his hand to Nathan. One by one, the men and women who had arrived in the 30 black SUVs applauded. Then every guest in the chapel rose to their feet. The applause echoed through the old building until tears filled my eyes. Nathan looked overwhelmed. He leaned toward me and whispered, "I never wanted any of this." I smiled through my tears. "I know. That's why you deserve it." The ceremony resumed. This time, the atmosphere was completely different. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the entire chapel erupted with joy. As Nathan and I walked back down the aisle together, the people who had arrived in those black SUVs formed a path of honor, applauding not because of wealth or status, but because of the kind of man he had chosen to be. Outside, beneath the afternoon sun, my father quietly approached us. His voice shook. "I spent years judging you by your profession." He looked directly at Nathan. "I never took the time to learn who you really were. I'm sorry." Nathan was silent for a moment before offering a gentle handshake. "I accept your apology," he said. "But earning trust takes time." My father nodded. "I understand." As Nathan and I drove away, I looked back at the chapel one last time. That morning, my father believed a man's worth could be measured by his job title. By sunset, he had learned what truly defines greatness. Not money, not power, not prestige, but integrity. Because in the end, the richest person in the room wasn't the one with the biggest paycheck. It was the one whose character inspired 30 black SUVs full of people to show up, not out of obligation but out of respect. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thanks.